Hi, thanks for joining in. This session is on Google Drive. Specifically, what are some tips you must know in order to best organize your Google Drive? We are all in that position where we have these wonderful files and all of this information, but what do we do with it and where do we begin? So I'm going to share with you a few of the best tips to consider when wanting to organize your Google Drive. As you know, your Google Drive is a great feature of our Google suite of tools. With Google Drive, you can store all of the files you need and keep engaged all within a secure environment. In addition, you can access all of those documents from any device as long as you're connected to the internet, and oftentimes even offline. You can upload files from your computer or create files directly in Google Drive. So it's one less place you need to worry about looking. And while we know how Google Drive works, and we can appreciate storing all of our files in one place, there is one somewhat of a drawback until you have your drive organized. That drawback is the clutter. Using Google tools like Docs and Sheets and so forth means more and more of you and colleagues are storing in our Google Drives. In turn, without even realizing it, thousands of files are being stored in your drive because you've been shared files, you've created files, and so forth. So that likely means you're at this point where you're struggling with how to keep everything properly organized. I would be remiss if I wasn't honest in telling you that it is going to take a little bit of work, especially in the beginning. But if you take into consideration the tips I'm offering here, you should be able to stay on top of the clutter that can come from your Google Drive and all of the features of Google Suite. Let's dive right in. Ideas to consider to control the clutter. Start with folders. Color code those folders. Add subfolders. In addition, you can use the list view and stars. Regularly audit your Google Drive. So here's where a little bit of work is going to be needed on your part. Also, try Google Workspaces, and don't forget, use that advanced search bar in your Google Drive, and consider using shortcuts. Let's look into each one of these a little bit further. While it might be one of the most obvious tips, creating folders will probably be very helpful to you. Once you start creating folders, you'll realize, just like in Gmail or in other tools, you now have a place to actually put all of these documents that are living in this one central repository called your Google Drive. So to start, go ahead and make some folders and then make your life easier by dragging and dropping documents into those folders. You can also move a file or a folder by dragging or by going to the drop-down box at the top and moving it. You can rename folders and so forth, so use that to your advantage. Personally, once I set up my base folders, it made it much easier to then drag and drop or file things directly into those folders. Of course, as time goes on, you may want to delete folders or add to it, which is why you want to regularly audit your Google Drive. And here is my Google Drive. When I go into it, this is what it looks like. I always go to the left where it says My Drive to this little drop down. A lot of time people don't realize that that exists. Drive title, all of the folders that I have previously created. For the most part, minus a few that we'll talk about in a minute, they are in order by alphabetical. So attendance is first, and so on and so forth. If I drop down next to attendance, you'll see if I had any other subfolders or information nesting there. You can also see if I have any of my folders sharing with anyone in particular. In this one, I have it shared as well because I have this little person icon. But what you should see here is that you can scroll down to all of these folders, okay? And again, if you have any subfolders nested in them, you would be able to see a drop down and go to any of the others as well. But you can close that for the time being. But be willing to open those drop down arrows and see what else is nested. But if you want to move any of these, you can drag, drop it, move it to another folder that's highlighted. You can nest folders, and you can easily go through and see what else is available in each of these folders. So certainly use folders to your advantage. Again, to start, if you haven't already, you will need to go ahead and create folders. You can do that by going to the plus new at the top here. You can do a lot of things, but one of them is to create a folder. I just press create folder. I can call it whatever I'd like, and I can always retitle it or rename this folder at a later time. So even if you just want this to be, old items. So you want to go through and maybe not delete anything, but you want to be able to refer to it later. Go ahead and call it old items. Pride. You can see I've got all these folders, but then I've got all this other stuff that are files that I've not yet put into any particular folder. So just like you, I have lots of items that are just living there, which I can use the search bar and other features we'll talk about in a minute to find these. But if I want to clean this up a little bit more, I can easily highlight multiple files and drag and drop them into any one of these folders on the left. So it's easier to create the folder first and then move, drag, drop, make it easier. Same with trash. If you find that some of these are not needed at all, go ahead and highlight them and drag them right into your trash, or again into a folder that's for older items or to review later. Make it easier and what you will be able to look at that's most convenient. Now that you're aware of how to create folders, drag, drop, rename them, you can go ahead and also consider color coding your folders. Some people like the idea of color coding because they remember certain topics or situations by a color. You might do that in your Gmail as well. You can also number folders. And if you really want to get fun and crazy, you can even use emojis. And you would add numbers and emojis using the Emoji Encyclopedia. And there's a link here below, and you can go ahead and do that. So it really depends on what you appreciate, but it's another option to consider. You might not have even realized that you have this option, and you can take your otherwise gray, unexciting looking folders and make them color coded so that they stick out, or certain important folders are highlighted for yourself, and so forth. Another way to keep a more organized structure for you in your Google Drive. So I'm back here in my Google Drive, and I am in all of my folders to the left under my drive. And I told you that most of these are in order by alphabetical, but there are a few that are not. And the reason for that is because I wanted to show you other options. So these 3 or 4 folders up here, I have color coded, and I've also added emojis, and in some places I've added numbers. So if you add an emoji, a number, that will change the way your filtering works in your drive. So if you want to keep it with alphabetical, then go ahead and do that. But if you want to put it in a number order, then it won't matter what the title of your folder is, because it will go by the numerical order. So when I go over here to Classroom and I right click, you can see that I have an option down here to rename. So this is where anytime you want, you can rename. So here you can see I have a little emoji and I have the word classroom. Why does that matter? Because if I'm looking at it quickly, maybe that will jog my memory. I know what that's about. And for some of us that are visual, that might just be a nicer way to keep it organized. If you like visuals or sort of icons and pictures, so you can do that. If I take the emoji off, this classroom folder will just go back in line in alphabetical order with all of the others. So whatever you want to do. But if you're interested in something like that, you can go over to the Emojipedia. Looks like this. I know, real fun. And for instance, you can do classroom, or actually I think I'll do school. And when that comes up, I can see all the options that have here. I'll go with bus. Some will be easier to find than others, so you have to be open-minded to which ones. When I find it, I just press copy, and then I can go back over here to my drive, and next to classroom, I can paste it in there. So if that's something you're interested in, you can get that from the Emojipedia. Alternatively, I can put a number, just like I do from my number pad. Or if I like an emoji type number, I can get something like that from the Emojipedia as well. So if you like numerical order, please feel free to do that as well. You can do that with subfolders too. So you can see now my classroom is my third folder because it's going in numerical order. I've got assignments here and then desktop backup. So here's an example of where I used an emoji number. So it's still in numerical order, but it's a different looking number if you like that. So it doesn't take a lot of time, easy to do, but if you prefer a more organized look or something visual, you can feel free to use that. If not, feel free to keep it in alphabetical order, which Google will do directly for you, or in numerical order by putting in a number. In addition, you can color code all of these folders. So you can see for assignments, I have it color coded orange. So I can, again, I can either right click on this folder, or I can go to the drop down box here, brings me to the same menu. And in addition to renaming this, right, so even if you just named it something quick so you can put everything in there, go back and rename it. Then I can also change the color. So if I associate all of my assignments with orange, or if that's even a color I use in my calendar for that type of situation, I can maybe make it the same. In any event, I can change the color at any point as well. So I'll make this one blue, and you can see now my assignments are blue. It's up there. So again, consider taking the time to organize this in whatever fashion, numerical, alphabetical, and color code. Make it visually appealing, make it easier to find items that you know where they belong. Next tip, consider using the list view and starring. So you want to find a file fast, make it easier to search through by starring certain files that you don't want to lose track of. So it's something that you want to find quickly. When you star it, it will go into an area that is starred, so you can go right there. So something to consider there. And also, most of us go into Google Drive looking at it as a grid, but finding it as a list can be even easier. Looking at my drive again, similar to yours, this is what it typically looks like when I open it. This may be shrunk down, but you can see all my folders here, and then if I scroll down, I've got all this extra documentation I've not yet filed. Okay. However, if you go up here to the top right, you can see it says list view. So I'm currently in grid view, but if I press list view, now I can list all of my folders in alphabetical order in whatever order I've chosen, and all the way down I'll also now see additional documents that I've not yet filed in alphabetical order. So if that is a little bit more appealing to you or easier to find items, feel free to do that, because that's a lot nicer than maybe being in this grid. It seems a little, especially if you're not at this point where you have folders, you may be just looking at a bunch of files and it feels overwhelming. So the simple switch of the button here will bring you to list view, and now everything's in alphabetical order. You can also, change this to change or modified, or, so forth if you want to change that up a little bit as well. But otherwise, it's in alphabetical order. So feel free to use that list or grid view as an option. Again, most of us don't realize that that's another option there. Starring a file is very simple to do. If you know which file you want to star, you can highlight it. So I'm in my attendance folder by chance, and I'm highlighting this particular file. I right-click to get that menu you saw earlier, and under Move To, right, so I can move it to a certain folder right from here instead of dragging and dropping, I can add to starred. So if I press that, I've now also labeled it in my starred so that instead of coming back into this folder and having to search for it, I can go right here into starred and I'll be able to find it right here at the top. So you can do it from there. If you open the file in the list, while you're in it, I'm often in a file and I say, oh geez, I'm going to need this for the next couple of weeks. I want to just get to it quickly. You can just press the star. Mine is already yellow because I started from the list. But if I started fresh in this file and I realize I want to star it, I can do that at any point. And again, once I do that, I can go back into my drive and I can find this file in starred. Okay. So once you unstar it, it will remove from this location, and it still can be found in your specific folder. But if you're not at the point where you have a lot of folders or you like the idea of just starring certain things, you can go ahead and do that. This next piece of information I want to share is something that is not available quite yet, but it should be coming soon. And that is the idea of search chips within Google Drive. So if you've been following, we have the idea of using search chips in Google Docs, and in your Gmail, you might have also noticed your search features look similar to this picture here. And what that does is it gives you more options to search. So the file types, the people that have shared it, when it was last modified. So right now we don't have this, but this should be coming sometime in the next several months. And I wanted you to know that this will also help your search and finding items if you're not one to organize it quite yet and you want to just be able to find it. This search chips functionality should be coming in the next several months to Google Drive and something to help us with our advanced search. Our next tip is regarding workspaces and priority. These are two areas within your Google Drive that you can use to access essential files. So we talked about starring files and being able to find them under the starred location. But there's also the idea of using priority and workspaces. So priority is an area that Google is creating for you. It uses machine learning to determine which files you're likely to need next. So basing on what you typically look for or use within your Google Drive, Google will put into the priority area the files they think you are most likely to need next. Below priority, you'll see another location called workspaces. And this is an area that you can use as your collection, kind of your own specific place to add important files in one location. So the same idea of being able to just go to one area and find what you want. You can use that workspaces as your own particular collection. So it could be a workspace for a particular project or topic and so forth. Moving files into a workspace won't change where they're currently being stored. It's only to help you find things more readily available. And you can also see any additional suggestions that might be helpful for related content to group together for you to have an easier organization. So again, priority is using machine learning to determine what files Google thinks you'll need next. And workspaces is something you can use manually to help organize files into certain workspaces or collections of information. So take advantage of those, make it easier for yourself as well. So as I told you earlier, when you're in your Google Drive, you can go to the My Drive and select this down arrow to see all of your folders, or list view to see all of the files as well. But right above My Drive to the left here is priority, something you may have seen lots of times but not really looked into it. So priority is what we just discussed, which is that idea that machine learning is going to decide what it thinks you're going to use next. So based on what I've been looking at or using in the last several days, this information is now being populated for me in priority. Then right below that is workspaces. So I've got this workspace that I created called My Stuff. I can drag and drop information in here. I can rename this. I can even hide this workspace. Or I can create another one or a new one. So I'll call this one my test area and create. So now I can add files. It's going to prompt me to add certain files and give it a minute here to decide what it wants to let me look at. So I am going to go here and I'm going to, so now I'm just in my drive. I can look through here. I'm going to move this one right on over. And now I can see what's in my test area. So I have 25 file limit, and I press done. So now I have 2 workspaces. So if you'd prefer to make these collection areas for yourself, again, based on a topic, a project, a department, you could do that as well. They're short-lived in the sense that you can only have up to 25 files, but this is for you. This isn't going to change the permissions or access of the files, and it's not going to change where they're located over here. This is just a quick access point for yourself. Our next tip is one that is probably not often thought about, but is so simple and it makes sense. And that's the idea of file documents and files as you go. So you might have noticed at the top of a file, for instance, the one viewing in this picture, how to create a mail merge in Gmail, I've got the star, which we looked at, and then I have another little icon, which is a folder. If I press that folder, I can actually choose right then and there where I want to file this, into any of my folders. Or do I want to create a folder? As you can see down below, I'll have the option to create a folder. And then I can search for, I can file it as I go. I know this belongs in training material, so I'm going to press that little icon and move it into the particular folder I want it at, so I don't have to worry about going back and doing it later. So if you get in the habit of filing as you go, just like save as, you'll be all set. Of course, if you don't, there's no harm. This is being saved all the time automatically. It's just another way to keep organized in advance. We also have the option of using shortcuts. These are files that act as pointers to help you find other files in Google Drive. So they allow you to manage your content with quick links to the items that you might need most. So by going to right-click on a file and going to that menu, you'll be able to see and add a shortcut to Drive option. You'll also be able to see within a particular file at the top next to your star and your folder icon, you'll also have another option to add a shortcut. So if that's also useful to you, you can make up to 500 shortcuts per file or folder for yourself. These are visible to everyone who has access to the folder or the drive, but it's another quick access point for yourself. And while you have shortcuts on the mind, I also want to mention that there are several keyboard shortcuts to use in Google Drive. So if you like using the right-click menu, that's perfectly fine. But if you're someone that likes to use quick keyboard shortcuts, feel free to use this slide as a guide for yourself to quickly use the search bar or to select a document, to rename it, and so forth. These are available to you if you like to work in that fashion. As we wind down here, one of the other overlooked ideas in Google Drive is the advanced search. While this won't necessarily organize anything for you, it is the solution to finding documents or files that are important to you. Don't forget that you can do that at any point. This might also help you to find files so that you can organize them a little bit better. But should you just want to find something quickly, the advanced search bar does provide for many opportunity. You can make it as simple as just putting in a keyword. You can put in an owner, or if you know who owns this particular file. and you can look anywhere, and you can, dive down into more specific advanced search criteria as well. I suggest that you leave it a little open-ended in the beginning so that you're capturing everything that you are looking for. And if that doesn't work, then certainly, whittle down to more search criteria until you find exactly what you're looking for. So while it's easy to get overwhelmed within your Drive, do use this search feature when you can. You can write anything in. I can write in dog. I don't expect I'll find much, but it will give me the most relevant options right away. So if I put something in like test, it'll give me what I'm looking for right there. If none of these work, then I can put in another search term to maybe make it more relevant. And then I can also go here to the search option icon. And this is where you'll see more elements to use. So do you want to make this a specific type? Okay. Yes, it's a form. If you're certain of that, if you know who is the owner, it's owned by me or it's someone else that shared it with you. Okay. Location, you want to check everywhere. And then we've got approvals, which is a new feature in Google Docs. So if there's any type of approval that it's waiting and you want to check that, you can do that. Date modified. And again, there's some more search terms you can use. I would caution you to only use them when you're certain or you really want to dig down deep, because what will happen is if you put in a specific word or item name and so forth, it's going to generate things only specific to that. So if it's a little more general because you're not sure, then I would leave it that way. But use these features. Find what you're looking for. You would be surprised at how much you can find pretty quickly. And my last tip for you is take time to audit your Google Drive. Even if that's once a month, once every 6 months, whatever works for you. Move files into designated folders. Remove or delete old files. If you don't want to delete them, move them into a special folder. Move unused folders into an archive folder. Make a separate area so that you can have everything out of your way and only the information that's important to you. If you use the tips that we talked about above, you should have no problem keeping your Google Drive organized, and hopefully you'll have less to audit at any given time. But certainly take the time to get it organized from the start and then use these tips to keep everything where you'd like it. Thank you so much for joining in, and as always, feel free to contact me, Allison Bunnell, Technology Trainer, if you have any questions or if I can help you any further. Thank you.